Good morning, everyone. My name is Raisa May Gayak. My report for today is about normative ethical tradition, identifying right and wrong. Section Overview. In this section, several key ethnical theories from the tradition of Western philosophy are introduced. Normative ethical theories are concerned with ethical action. In other words, with what people ought to do in general. This section provides a brief overview of the main types of normative ethical theories, and it introduces key reassuring terms and concepts. What is normative ethics? Normative ethics involves at arriving at moral standards that regulate right and wrong conduct. Kasama sa normative ethics ang pagdating sa mga pamantayang moral na kumukontrol sa tama at maling pag-uugali. Sa isang kahulugan nito ay isang paghahanap para sa isang perpektong litmus test ang wastong pag-uugali. Tinatawag itong perspective ethics. Perspective ethics naman na ito ay isang pag-aaral ng mga teoryang etikal na nagsasaad kung paano dapat kumilos ang mga tao. Sinusuri nito ang mga pamantayan para sa tama o mali ng mga aksyon. Ang normative ethics ay nagmumungkahi ng kaparusahan kapag ang isang tao ay lumihis sa landas ng mga mitiin. Nagbibigay ito ng mga katwiran para sa pagpaparusa ng isang tao na nakakagambala sa kaayusan ng lipunan o moral. Sinusubukan nitong magtatag ng ilang mga teorya sa mga patnubay ng ilang mga pamantayan. Nag-aalok ng moral ethics ng mga moral na prinsipyo na gagamitin upang malutas ang paghihirap ng moral na desisyon. Meta-ethics is the study of origin and meaning of ethical concepts. Meta-ethics ay ang pag-aaral ng pinagmulan at kahulugan ng mga ethical na konsepto. Ang terminong meta ay nangungulugang pagkatapos ng higit pa, at dahil dito ang paniniwala ng meta-ethics ay nagsasangkop ng isang inalis o bird-eye view ng buong proyekto ng etika. Sa meta-ethics may dalawang issue. Una is metaphysical ethics, kung ang moralidad ay umiiral ng independente sa mga tao at silohalikal sa mga isyu tungkol sa pinagbabatayan ng metal na batayan ng ating moral ng mga paghatol sa pag-uugali. Madaling salita, ang meta-ethics ay ang pinag-aaral kung anong malaga ang tinutukoy ng mga ethical na termino at teorya. Tinutukoy nito ang bisa ng mga teoryang sinusulong sa normative ethics. Gumagamit tayo ng ilang konseptong moral tulad ng tama, mali, mabuti o masama, upang suriin ang mga kilos ng tao. Ang mga konseptong moral ay ginagamit bilang mga kasangkapan sa pagpasa ng mga moral na panghusga. Sinusuri ng meta-etika ang mga konseptong etikal. Pinag-aaral nito ang kahulugan ng mga konseptong moral at ang metaphysics ng mga katotohanang moral. Ang meta-ethics ay naglalayong maunawaan ang likas na katangian ng mga ethical na katangian at pagsusuri. What is descriptive ethics? Descriptive ethics is the study of people belief about morality. Ang descriptive ethics ay ang pag-aaral ng mga paniniwala ng mga tao tungkol sa moralidad. Ito ay nagsasangkot sa empirical na pagsisiyasat. Ito ay nagbibigay sa atin ng isang pangkahalatang pattern o isang paraan ng pamumuhay ng mga tao sa iba't ibang uri ng pamayanan. Descriptive ethics ay nag-aaral sa kasaysayan ng elusyon ng etika. Nagbibigay ito ng talaan ng ilang mga totoo, kaugalian o konbensyon. Halimbawa, ito ay nagsasaad ng kasaysayan ng iba't ibang institusyon tulad ng pamilya o kasal. Descriptive ethics ay nag-iimbestiga sa mga ethical na mitiin ng mga tao kung ano ang mga aksyon o hinahantulan sa lipunan ng nilalayon nitong alamin ang mga paniniwala ng mga tao tungkol sa mga halaga, kung aling mga aksyon ang tama o mali at kung aling mga katangian ng isang moral ang ahente ang mabubuti. Ang descriptive etika ay naghahanap ng paliwanag ng mga aktwal na pagpipili na ginagawa ng ahenteng moral sa pagsasagawa. Sinusubukan nito ang suriin ang mga code ng etika na inilapat ng iba't ibang grupo. Ang descriptive ethics ay isang walang halaga sa disyente sa etika. Ito ay empirical na pagsisiyasat sa mga paniniwalang moral ng mga tao.
Good day everyone, my name is Princess Joey Jugaral from BSc 2. What is ethical theory? Western ethics are dominated by the ethical theories such as deontology and utilitarianism. The first emphasizes the use of reason and logic to find what is believed to be the right answer to ethical problems, and then demands adherence to moral decision irrespective of the consequence. Why use ethical theory? Ethical theories are attempts to provide a coherent and ambiguous understanding of ethical responsibilities. They are, in other words, attempt to present a single narrative about what we are required to accomplish without citing specific examples. Because ethical theories describe the viewpoint from which individuals seek direction as they make decisions. They form part of the decision-making foundation from decision-making when ethics are in play. Ethics are important because it's defined who we are as individuals and as a society. These are standards of conduct that everyone should adhere to. If we accept that every one of us can choose the proper thing to do, our society will devolve into chaos.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm a reporter today, so I'm going to report the continuation of Western ethical theories. The main traditions of Western ethical thought. These types of theories, which are concerned with how we ought to act, belong to the branch of philosophical study called normative ethics. Normative ethics is the branch of moral philosophy or ethics, concerned with the formula of what is morally right and wrong. It includes the formulation of moral rules that have direct implications of what human actions, institutions, and ways of life should be like. Remember that normative ethical theories are concerned with moral actions and with how people ought to live their lives. While some of the terms used here may be new to you, the ideas behind those terms will probably be more familiar. Most of these ideas form the basis of modern-day environmental and development policy, and they are very commonly used as the basis of ethical arguments. Also, as a result of when people use deductive reasoning, they are applying a general principle to a particular situation. For instance, a general principle such as all people have the right to a clean environment may be applied more specifically. Therefore, a company should not be allowed to pollute the environment and to endanger the health of local residents. By becoming familiar with the main tradition of ethical thought, you will be able to identify clearly how to use these principles when you construct your own arguments. You will also be able to recognize these arguments when they are used by other people. By thinking about the problematic issues surrounding these moral traditions, you can apply these critiques both to your own thinking and the arguments of others. If you are aware of somewhat theoretical conflicts between these traditions, and if you can recognize when these ethical principles are being used, this can equip you to spot inconsistencies in the arguments that you or others make. In normative ethical traditions, in normative ethics, there's a part of normative ethical like a moral philosophy. The moral philosophy is the rational study of the meaning and justification of moral claims. A moral claim evaluates the rightness or wrongness of an action or a person's character. For example, lying and laziness. Lying is wrong and also the laziness is wrong. Moral philosophy is usually divided into three distinct subject areas: meta-ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. Meta-ethics examines the nature of moral claims and arguments. This partly involves attempting to determine if moral claims have clear essential meanings, like for example, they avoid vagueness and ambiguity. But it also attempts to answer questions such as: are moral claims expressions of individual emotions? Are moral claims social inventions? Are moral claims divine commands? Can one justify moral claims? And the last is, how does one justify them? Next is normative ethics. Normative ethics examines moral standards that attempt to define right and wrong conduct. Historically, this has involved examining good and bad habits, duties, or an action's consequences. In addition, historically, normative ethics is focused on the prospect of a single moral standard, defining right and wrong conduct, but it has become more common for philosophers to propose a moral pluralism with multiple moral standards. Applied ethics examines specific. The last is applied ethics examines specific moral issues. For example, one is doing applied ethics when one addresses the morality of abortion, euthanasia, capital punishment, environmental concerns, or homosexuality. By using the conceptual tools of meta-ethics and normative ethics discussions, in applied ethics try to resolve these issues. That's all. Thank you.
Normative ethics in Western philosophy. How should people act? With that one question, you've just unlocked the door to thousands of philosophical debates. How should people act? What's right, action or a wrong one? How do we know? How do we assign value to actions? Who's to say what's right or wrong? Question or morality like this generated field of philosophy called ethics. When those questions are specifically focused on and the morality of action, it's known as normative ethics. Deontology. The first school of thought within normative ethics is something we call deontology. A deontological ethical theory is one which seeks to explain the inherent rightness or wrongness of an action. Is it wrong to lie? It is right to help someone? Deontology states the people should do things simple because they are right and for no other reason. We're looking at the morality of action itself, and that's it. Consequentialism. One of the big problems that some people have with deontology is that it can seem impossible to uniformly define a moral action based solely on inherent goodness. Who's to say what makes an action good? Critics of deontology argue that the only way to determine the goodness of an action is to examine its consequence. The field of ethics focuses on the morality of the consequence of an action is named appropriately and not consequentialism. Theological. The word theological is derived from two Greek words, telos, which means purpose or goal, and logos, which refers to the science or study. It is concerned with being good, in other words, with being a good person with good intentions. Therefore, it contrasts to deontological ethics. The theological ethical traditions concentrate on the purpose of or the intention behind human actions. The focus of theological ethical theories is on what the goal of a given decision is.
Good day everyone, I am Nina Kamat and today I am going to discuss the deontological and teleological. First, what is deontological? The word deontological is derived from the Greek word deon, meaning duty. It is concerned with the right action. In other words, with doing the right thing simply because it is the right thing to do. Deontological theories focus on whether ethical decisions are right or wrong, regardless of the consequences or intentions of those ethical decisions. The deontological is an ethical theory that uses rules to distinguish right from wrong. It just requires that people follow the rules and do their duty. What is teleological? The word teleological is derived from two Greek words, telos, which means purpose or goal, and logos, which refers to science or study. It is concerned with being good. In other words, with being a good person with good intentions. Therefore, in contrast to deontological ethics, the teleological ethical traditions concentrate on the purpose of or the intention behind human action. The focus of teleological ethical theories is on what the goal of a given decision is. What is the key difference between teleological and deontological? Teleological ethics determines the goodness or badness of an action by examining its consequences, while deontological ethics determines the goodness or badness of the action by examining the action itself. Ang deontological ay nagbe-base sa rules. Halimbawa, yung laws natin, yung mga batas natin or yung Ten Commandments, doon nagbabase kung tama ba or mali yung nagawa ng isang tao. Sa teleological naman, nagbabase kung ano ang goal or intention kung bakit mo yun nagawa. Halimbawa, nagnakaw ka kasi walang makain ng pamilya mo. Kung sa deontological, ito ay mali dahil nasa batas na bawal magnakaw. Kung sa teleological naman, ito ay tama sapagkat nagawa mo lang yon para may makain yung pamilya mo. Para mas lalong maintindihan kung ano ang deontological at teleological, magbibigay ako ng isang halimbawa. Halimbawa, pinasok ng magnanakaw ang iyong bahay at balak nitong patayin ang iyong pamilya ngunit naunahan mo ito kaya namatay yung magnanakaw. Kung pagbabasehan natin sa deontological, ito ay mali kasi nasa ating batas na bawal pumatay ng tao. Kung titignan naman natin sa teleological, ito ay tama sapagkat ginawa mo lang naman yon para protektahan ang iyong pamilya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Pamir Laba, one of the reporter of Group 2, and my topic is deontological ethics. Deontological ethics. Non-consequentialism. All deontological ethics theories are non-consequentialist. This means that they place the emphasis on the decision or action itself, on the motivations, principles, or ideas underlying the decision or actions. rather than being concerned with the outcomes or consequences of that decision or actions. This reasoning is found on the desirability of principle, usually duties or right, to act in a given situation. The two main non-consequentialist theories are ethics of duties and ethics of right and justice. Both of these are rooted in assumption about universal rights and wrongs and responsibilities. This means that people who promote this type of ethical principles usually believe that they should be applied to everyone everywhere in the world. If a child in a one country has a right to an education, then this means that all children everywhere, everyone in the world should have right to an education. Example of this type of principle can be found in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 2. The Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without the distinction of any kind such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be the independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty.
Assalamualaikum. Good day everyone. I am Almira S. Lanzak and the topic that I will report is all about duties. Karamihan sa mga tao ay naniniwala na ang lahat ng tao ay may ilang tungkulin sa ibang tao. Ang mga tungkulin ay maaaring positibo tulad ng pag-aalaga ng mga anak o negatibo tulad ng huwag pumatay ng ibang tao. Kapag ginagamit ng mga tao ang mga tungkulin, kadalasan ginagawa nila ito sa paraang nagpapahiwatig o nagpapakita na ang tungkulin ay pangkalahatan sa lahat ng tao. Ang foundation ng mga teorya ng mga tungkulin ay ang teorya na binuo o na-develop ng isang philosopher na si Immanuel Kant, 1724-1804. Sa halip na umasa sa relihiyon para sabihin sa atin kung ano ang ating mga tungkulin, naniniwala si Kant na maaari tayong umasa sa ating mga kapangyarihan ng pangangatwiran upang gawin ito. So, Kant believed that we have our own initiatives para gawin yung mga tungkulin. Hindi dapat tayo umaasa na iutos pa ito ng ibang tao para gawin yung ating mga tungkulin. Bagkus, gawin natin ito dahil para ito sa ating sarili o dahil ito ay ating kagustuhan. Ang ilang mga aksyon at desisyon ay batay sa ating personal na hangarin. Halimbawa, kung gusto mong manirahan sa magandang bahay, dapat kang magtrabaho ng gusto o dapat kang magtrabahong mabuti para mahangad o makuha ito. Gayunpaman, hindi ito isang categorical imperative dahil ito ay nakabatay lamang sa mga hinahangad. Sinasabi sa ating ng isang categorical imperative na dapat tayong gumawa ng ating mga personal na hangarin. Halimbawa, dapat mong alagaan ang iyong mga magulang. Categorical imperative is something that a person must do, no matter what the circumstances. So, sinasabi sa categorical imperative ay isang bagay na dapat gawin ng isang tao, anuman ang pangyayari o kahihinatnan nito. People have a duty to do the right thing even if it produces a bad result. So, halimbawa, it would be wrong to tell a lie in order to save a friend from a murderer. So, mali daw ang magsinungaling para maisalba o mailigtas ang isang kaibigan sa isang mamamatay tao. So, a person is doing something good if they are doing a morally right action. Ang ating kalooban ay tinutukoy bilang nagbibigay ng mga motibo para sa ating mga ginagawa.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmate. I'm going to reporting today because the topic of my reporting is Declaration of Human Rights. Okay. People shall be never be seen as a man to an according to a basic premise of the categorical approach. This implies that people must be treated with respect, using someone as a tool to achieve anything else, and what treating them as a means to earn, and in details purchasing item created by workers who are paid unacceptably low salaries in order to secure as a low price for the communities they make, is training worker as a means to our goals in filing to meet our obligation to them. For choosing assure fair in trade product, on the other hand, acknowledge our responsibility to ensure that the employers who make our product are paid fair pay. The terms obligation is employed is more than only secular context. The commandment to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and draw from the Christian text. But it is found is many other religion tradition as well. Both secular and religion idea of duty impose a variety of obligation on us, such as keeping promise, avoiding harming others, compensating others when we injure them, upholding justice, and improving others' living condition, among others. The concept of duties is right are frequently intervened when someone possesses a right. Others are usually obligated to protect the right. And furthermore, we all know that the words "don't do others nor to you," this sentence may be good example. Have justice every humankind. Every deserve to be a good situation. Of don't want the karma, then do it. By doing respect and understanding each other, we can achieve the word peace. In this case, we can the health justice and betterness of every individual is make our place live peacefully and have a good future. The right of individual makes us live longer and do whatever you want, and that's all. Thank you.
Right theory is one of particular duty-based theory of ethics. Means is duty-based theory is talk about yung morality of an action ay dapat nakabantay on whatever than action itself is tama or mali, rather than based on the consequence of the action. A right is a justified claim against another person behavior immediately. Always remember that right and duty are closely related and cannot be separated from one another. Both go side by side. These are two sides of the same coin. Halimbawa, you have the right to life and exposes in your the obligation to not to expose your life to danger, as well as the respect the life and other. And as what your 2009 or 103 explained, the most widely accepted justification for moral right released on Kant. Pathological agreement in the agreement justified by Kant in the arguing the moral obligation is rationalness necessarily that which rational world is morally right.
The concept of individual human rights is important to Western legal system as developed both from the agreement that all humans have certain natural rights and from the religious nation, ang karapatan ay nagmumula naman sa Panginoon according to Year 2013. In the American Declaration of Independence assert that all means are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable right. Year 2009 or 104. The French Revolution proclaimed that the rights of man are natural rights intersect to the humanity of each person. Year 2009 or 104. Throughout the 19th century, the justification for right became more secular, but right were usually confined to the nature. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948 is based on the reasoning that justice and equal treatment of human ought to the apply universally. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Article 90 and 18 state that everyone has the right to freedom of truth, conscience, and religion. These rights include freedom to change his her religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with other and public or private manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, observation. In Article 19, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. The right include freedom to hold opinion without interference and to seek, receive, and impact information and ideas through any media and regardless features. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and good morning, ma'am. I am Jumaima D. Lumilis, 2A student, and this is my report. Our topic today is all about what is consequentialism. Consequentialism is an ethical doctrine which holds the belief that the morality, that is, the rightness or wrongness of a human act depends on its consequence. Most famous type of consequentialism is utilitarianism. As in well known, in utilitarianism, the basis of the morality of human acts are consequent benefit that the act brings to many people concerned. In fact, for the utilitarian, an act is morally right, it is produce greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. And morally wrong, it is produce more pain than happiness to the greatest number of people concerned. Ibig sabihin, morally right kung ito'y nagpo-produce ng malaking kaligayahan sa maraming bilang ng tao at morally wrong kung ito'y nagpo-produce ng maraming sakit o lungkot kaysa sa kaligayahan ng pinakamaraming bilang ng mga taong nababahala. Because in consequentialism, the morality of human act is judged because on its consequence. This type of ethics, therefore, is non-prescriptive. Hence, if a deontologist says, we should not lie, because it is always morally wrong to lie. A consequentialist says, it is morally right to lie if doing so would produce a good outcome or consequence. One good example would be a physician lying outrightly to a patient with stage 4 lung cancer who is also having a cardiac condition. Obviously, for the consequentialist, if the physician would outrightly tell the patient with a cardiac condition about her real medical condition, then it may hasten the death of the patient. Tinutukoy dito na kung direktang sasabihin ng isang doktor sa kanyang pasyente ang tungkol sa katunay na kondisyon ng kanyang pagpapamedikal, maaari itong makakaapekto sa pasyente. Maaaring mapabilis ang pagkamatay ng pasyente it because of shocking. Other famous type of consequentialism are ethical egoism and ethical altruism. On the one hand, ethical egoism puts more emphasis on the idea that one ought of act in such a way that is maximized or serves one's self-interest. On the other hand, ethical altruism mandates that we ought to take actions that have maximum benefits for everyone except for oneself. So, ang ethical egoism ay ang normatibong etikal na posisyon na dapat kumilos ang mga ahente sa moral na kanilang sariling interes. So, ito naiiba sa psychological na egoism na nagsabing kumilos sa kanilang pansariling interes. Ang ethical altruism naman ay isang doktrinang etikal na pinaniniwalaan na ang moral na halaga ng mga aksyon ay isang individual ay nakasalalay lamang sa epekto sa ibang mga individual na anuman ang mga kahihinatnan sa individual sa kanilang sarili. Consequentialism is one of the type of ethical doctrine that supports the idea that it is the end that justifies the means. As a matter of fact, consequentialism permits that the end justify the means even if the means used is problematic. Yun lamang po. Thank you and wassalam.
Good day everyone, my name is Sheka Maurice M. Mahmoud and I'm going to explain all about egoism, the theory of ethical egoism. Egoism. Egoism is the theory that oneself is or should be the motivation for all of our actions. It is worth distinguish between egoism as a descriptive argument, an argument that tell us how the world actually is, and the egoism as a normative argument, an argument that tell us how the world ought to be. Egoism as a descriptive argument describes human nature as a self-centered. It is strongest form. It is argued that individuals only ever act in their own self-interest, even where they appear be acting in others' interest. Descriptive egoism explains that the person is really motivated by their own self-interest, disguised by arguments, rationalization of doing one's duty or helping others. In fact, our motivation, deeds behind doing good may to be make ourselves feel good, to make ourselves look good in the eyes of the others, or because we believe that by helping others will help us. Even if we donate money to charity anonymously, we may still only really do this because it makes us feel good about ourselves. In contrast, egoism as a normative argument tells us that we should be acting in our interest, as this is the only way that overall welfare can be improved. If everyone acts in their own self-interest, then society will be more efficient, which will be in everyone's interest. It is therefore morally right to pursue one's own self-interest. One of the most famous normative egoists was Adam Smith, one of the pioneers of neo-class economic theory. He argued that self-interest behavior is right if it leads to normally acceptable ends. Smith argued that everyone followed their self-interest. Then society as a whole would be improved. Importantly, he also argued that if egoism led in fact to the worsening of society, then it should be abandoned. The theory of egoism is at the heart of capitalist arguments that a corporation's sole responsibility is it to shareholders. However, some form of social and environmental responsibility can be consistent with egoism because egoist decision may address immediate moral demands by aiming to satisfy long-term, self-maximizing objectives of the firm. Example, profitability or individual. Example, philanthropy. While it is an important theory for understanding economic rationality, we do not consider egoism in great depth here. Of more interest is another consequentialist theory, that of utilitarianism.
Good day everyone, I'm Jonalyn Mapayag, and in this video, I'm going to discuss what is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is the modern form of the consequentialist theory of utilitarianism derives from 19th century British philosophers as Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. And it has been particularly influential in areas of the world influenced by British culture. Rather than maximize individual welfare, utilitarianism focuses on collective welfare, and it identifies goodness with greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. So maximizing benefit for the greatest number of people, involves net assessment of benefit. Utility is the net of result of benefits and people, and these benefits are cost. Utility has entered modern economics as a key quantitative concept. The concept of trade-offs is especially embraced, and social and environmental cost-benefit analysis and explicit utilitarian tools for assessing the goodness of an action. A simple balance sheet of costs and benefits can be drawn up to assess the overall utility of a decision, which means utilitarianism is a theory of morality that advocates actions that foster happiness or pleasure and oppose action that cause unhappiness or harm. Utilitarianism would say that an action is right if it results in the happiness of the greatest number of people in a society or a group. And utilitarianism has three essential elements. First is whether an action is right or wrong determined solely by its consequences. Number two, the value of consequences of an action is assessed in terms of the amount of happiness or well-being caused. Number three, in assessing the total happiness caused to a number of people, equal of a happiness are to have equal value. No one person's happiness having greater value than another's. Ibig sabihin, sa pagpapahalaga ng kabuuang kaligayahan na dulot ng maraming tao, ang halaga ng kaligayahan ay dapat magkaroon ng pantay na halaga. Walang kaligayahan ng isang tao na may higit na halaga kaysa sa iba. Well, that's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Alinar Emasu Jr. One of the most famous egoists was Adam Smith. One of the pioneers of neoclassical economic theory, he argued that self-interested behavior is right if it leads to morally acceptable ends. Smith argued that everyone followed their self-interest, then society as a whole would be improved. Importantly, he also argued that if egoism led, in fact, to the worsening of society, then it should be abandoned. The theory of egoism is the heart of the capitalist arguments that a corporation's sole responsibility is to its shareholders. However, some form of social and environmental responsibility can be consistent with egoism because egoist decision may address immediate moral demands by aiming to satisfy long-term self-maximizing objectives of the firm profitability or the individual philanthropy. While it is an important theory for understanding economic rationality, we do not consider egoism in great depth here. Of more interest is another consequentialist theory, that of utilitarianism.
Hello guys, my name is Ibayas Matano from BSc Literature. What is virtue ethics? Virtue ethics is a person rather than action-based. It looks at the virtue or moral character of the person carrying out an action, rather than at the ethical duties and rules or the consequences of particular action. Virtue ethics, a moral theory that focuses on the development of virtuous character. Virtues, ingrained disposition to act by standards of excellence. In virtue ethics, character is the key to the moral life, for it is from a virtuous character that moral conduct and values naturally arise. Difference between the virtue ethics versus utilitarianism. Normative ethics. Virtue ethics is a moral theory that is concerned with the moral character or goodness of the individual carrying out an action. Focuses on the person carrying out the action. A right act or a good act is an act that is carried out by a virtuous person. Descriptive ethics. Utilitarianism is the moral theory that states an action is right if it is useful or is beneficial for a majority. Focuses on consequences of the action. A right act is an act that brings the greatest good for the greatest number of people. The virtue that we need most of all is the virtue that Aristotle called practical wisdom. Practical wisdom is the moral will to do the right thing and the moral skill to figure out what the right thing is. Our attitudes, dispositions, or character traits that enable us to be and to act in ways that develop this potential. They enable us to pursue that ideals we have adopted: honesty, courage, compassion, generosity, fidelity, integrity, fairness, self-control, and prudence are all examples of virtues. The examples of virtuous people. Number 1. Another area of virtue ethics is the model behavior on people whom we may consider virtuous. Number 2. If you are an aspiring football player, you can study the skills and expertise of a good player and try to copy them. Number 3. There is great diversity between virtuous people, e.g. Gandhi and Bob Geldof. Number 4. Virtuous role models are not perfect, e.g. Princess Diana, but we can follow her good examples. Number 5. Role models could also be fictitious, e.g. Harry Potter. Number 6. People with faith may follow Jesus or the Prophet Muhammad. Number 7. Young Christians sometimes wear wristbands with WWJD on. What would Jesus do to encourage them to be more like him? Virtue ethics. Another branch of the theological strand of ethics is that of being good. The most well-known of these ethical theories is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics shifts that analytical emphasis away from rule-based decision-making of deontological ethics or of the consequences of an action, e.g. in utilitarianism, towards the ethics of individuals and the ethics of human character. So, for example, where a utilitarian would argue that giving to a charity maximizes well-being society, and a deontological would argue that we have a duty to help others. A virtue ethics would point to the fact that helping others displays desirable virtues such as being charitable or benevolent. Other desirable virtues include honesty, courage or friendship, mercy, loyalty, modesty, patience, and so on. The opposites of virtues are vices. These terms are explained in.
Ang seksyon na ito ay nagbibigay ng maikling pangkalahatang ideya ng mga normatibong teoryang etikal na may impluwensya sa etikal na pag-iisip. Ang mga kalamangan at kahinaan ng bawat teorya ay maaaring masuri ng mas detalyado at higit pang mga halimbawa kung paano ginagamit ang mga teoryang ito sa mga debate, sa patakaran at sa pagbuo ng mga argumento. Gayunpaman, sa ngayon, dapat ay nakakuha ka ng sapat na malinaw na pangkalahatang ideya ng mga teoryang ito upang maunawaan kung ano ang tinutukoy ng ilan sa mga pangunahing termino. At marahil ay kilalanin din ang ilan sa mga prinsipyong ito na ginagamit. Gayunpaman, ito ay kapakipakinabang upang tingnan ang ilan sa mga pangkalahatang kritisismo ng mga normatibong teoryang etikal na ito. Ang mga etikal na ipinapakita sa seksyon na ito ay mula sa kanluraning pilosopikal na tradisyon. Sila ay batay sa iba't ibang mga pagpapalagay at magkasama silang nagbibigay ng pragmatikong balangkas para sa paghusga ng tama at mali sa paggawa ng desisyon. Ngunit sila ay binatikos dahil sa pagiging masyadong malinis at maayos, at marahil ay masyadong naisip o nagkalkula para sa totoong mundo. Ibubuod ni Crane at Matten noong 2007 ang mga kritika ng mga teoryang ito sa 5 magkakaugnay na punto.
Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. I'm Nazma Z. Muhammad from BSCD 2A. This is the continuation of the report of Ms. Jurafa Muhammad. The critics of these theories in 5 related points. Number 1, they involve a high level of abstraction from reality. Number 2, they may be narrow in their application. Number 3, they are overly academic. Number 4, they are inhuman. And the last, the number 5, they involve prescriptive approaches. So first, they involve a high level of abstraction from reality. The real world is complex and such a principled approach to resolving day-to-day dilemmas about behavior is unhelpful and ignores the real-world context of decision makers. So, isa sila sa mayroong pinakamataas na idea patungkol sa katotohanan. The real world is masalimuot, but they are always having a honest and moral ways na nakabase sa moral rules to speak about something. Para ma-solve ang pang-araw-araw na mga problema patungkol sa pag-ugali ng isang tao na hindi nakakatulong at hindi pinapansin ang mga idea na totoong nangyayari sa mundo. Number 2, they may be narrow in their application. The reductionist critic suggests that the focus on one particular aspect of ethics, such as right or duties, reduce the complexity of ethical issues to one narrow parameter of reality when all are important. Iminumungkahi ng kritika ng reductionist na ang tumuon sa isang partikular o bagay sa aspeto ng etika, like ng karapatan o tungkulin, ay binabawasan ng pagiging komplikado sa mga issues o problema sa isang makitid na parameter ng katotohanan kapag ang lahat ay mahalaga. Third, they are overly academic. Perhaps the abstraction and narrowness are a reflection of theologians who live in a world. Perhaps the rarefied ivory tower academic environment that gives undue value to the wisdom of such specialists as the arbiters of what is right and wrong, and how to decide between the two. So, yun nga yun. Parang nawawalan na siya sa pinopoint out ng isang theoretician dahil minsan iba-iba na yung sinasabi or pinupunto niya sa isang bagay or theory. Ay nagiging over. Then kapag nangyari yun, doon na pumapasok yung academic environment. Yung mga specialist, yun ang tinatawag na arbiters judge. Kasama ng board niya, sila yung nagde-decide kung ano yung tama or mali. Ang arbiters judge, a person or agency whose judgment or opinion is considered authoritative arbiters of taste. Fourth, they are inhuman. Again, the principles are enunciated in an impersonal context in which decision-making becomes formulaic and human relation, instincts, and emotion are absent. Ang isang prinsipyo ay binibigkas sa isang impersonal sa kung anumang desisyon at nagiging formulaic relasyon pantao, instinct at walang emotion. And the last, fifth, they involve prescriptive approaches. The principle and their application suggest that ethical dilemmas can be solved by a given set of rules, whereas true decision-making requires a high involvement of individuals and ownership through using their own discretion and judgment. So, sa kanilang paniniwala at mga kinikilos ay nagiging dahilan ito upang hindi maging sapat para pumili kung ano ang tama at mali. So, paraan ma-solve ito ay kinakailangan nilang dumaan sa ibinigay na hanay ng mga tuntunin or set of rules, samantalang sa tunay na paggawa ng desisyon ay kinakailangan ng approval o pagpasya ng mga kataas-taasang hukuman o judge.
Ang mga pagtutol na ito ay nagmula sa loob ng isang pandaigdigang lipunan na mismong nagbabago sa magkakaibang paraan. Sa pangkalahatan, sa mga bansa sa kanluran, hindi bababa sa may mga usong malayo sa absolutismo at patungo sa flexibility at subjectivity. Marahil patungo sa isang mas moderno o postmodern personalized, individualist at situational ethics. Ang pagtaas ng katanyagan ng etika ng bertud sa nakalipas na mga dekada ay sa isang bahagi, isang reaksyon sa mga kritisismong ito. Ang mga alternatibong paradigma sa kultura ay malamang
na mag-ambag ng mga bagong insight na maaaring hindi palitan ang evolutionary pathway ng pilosopiya na sinimulan ng mga sinaunang Griego. Mga 2,500 taon na ang nakalilipas, ngunit malamang na makaka-impluwensya sa mga pattern ng pag-uugali sa loob ng mga international na institusyon, organisasyon at negosyo sa buong signulong ito.